Welcome to Build Your Best Business. I'm your host, Eric Holtzclaw. Build Your Best Business focuses on the entrepreneurial journey. What does it take to successfully start, manage, grow, and eventually exit a business? And along the way, you might decide that you want to do business outside the United States. So we're going to talk a little bit about that today. My guest today is Uli Dendy. She is the CEO of TrueLanguage. Uli, thanks so much for joining me.
Hey, Eric. Thanks so much for asking me to be here today.
Tell me a little bit about TrueLanguage. What is TrueLanguage?
TrueLanguage is a language service company, and we typically support mid to large size companies who have a training department, marketing, corporate comm with their foreign language materials. That can be anything from press releases to technical manuals or e-learning system, software application, pretty much anything that goes into a foreign language.
Okay.
We do.
Okay. Yeah, nice. And that's so much more important since the world is flat now, right? Like things don't just end up in your local area. Like you got communications going all over the place.
Yeah, it's amazing. And it's amazing how technology has enabled us to go globally and communicate globally without even ever leaving your desk.
Right. Yeah. So tell me about your background. Like how did you get into this space?
Well, I started out studying microbiology and genetics.
Oh, wow.
And in the course of my study as a graduate student, I decided that being in the lab was really not where I wanted to be for the rest of my life. And friends of mine in Huntsville, Alabama said, oh, there's this great company called Innograph, and they have a translation department. And I said, great. I applied, I interviewed, and there goes the first misconception. So the typical misconception is that if you're bilingual, you can translate.
Yeah.
That is so not true.
Okay.
But Innograph hired me and trained me to be a technical writer/translator. And that was early on when software localization was in its baby shoes. I became very familiar with software localization, and then UPS hired me as a consultant to come in and help them with their very first localization project. And they chose German because at the time, buttons were not expandable, and they decided German had such long words. So if it fit on the button using German, it should fit with any other language pretty much. And that's really how I got my footing.
That's interesting because I've done a couple of projects that included international components, and one of them was for a tractor manufacturer. Mm-hmm. And we started in Germany for the same reason. We were designing the interface on the inside of the tractor, and they were trying to determine if they were going to use symbols or words. And if they were going to use words, they knew that the longest character set would be German. So they're like, let's start there. And if we can figure that out, then maybe we can expand that to other markets and have things work. So something that you said that was interesting and probably something people don't know is that, so if you're bilingual, that doesn't mean that you can do translation.
Think about it. Just because you're an English speaker and I don't know, you studied biology like I did, doesn't mean that you're a great writer, right?
Right.
So putting thoughts on paper, communicating clearly, that's not something that comes natural to a lot of people. It's something that you train, you practice, you study for. Got
it. So if you're bilingual and you're good at writing in general, does that help?
Absolutely, that helps. So that is a very important part. But then also you have to be able to do research. You have to be a subject matter expert in several things. So for me, my expertise was science and biology. I discovered that I had a knack for technology because of that, and that made me become a valuable translator for that background into German, always into your native language, and then with a specialized background.
Got it. Okay. Yeah. Because you talk about being in the lab. I went to school for computer sciance. And when I realized that I'd be programming computers every day, that was not necessarily what I wanted to do, which is why I've never programmed computers. But it's almost like I speak a second language because I can speak the technology piece of it.
It's valuable experience that you gained, and you build on it for the rest of your life.
Right. Yeah. And so in your capacity of what you guys do with TrueLanguage and kind of the types of problems you're solving today. You talked in generality about maybe a press release or marketing materials. So is it that a company's coming to you and they've built everything already in English and need to go somewhere else with it? Or are you helping them build it that way to know that how much of it translates and works? Do you have to redo the whole thing? Like, what does that look like?
Yeah, companies may have already started to reach their global audience or their global workforce. A lot of times they use inside people, I don't know, the lawyer who also speaks another language may write a piece, or the corporate comm person who has maybe learned Spanish may attempt to, write a little marketing piece in another language. They do that for a little while until they realize that it's actually not very productive. People are not working in what they're supposed to be doing, but they're trying to do the translation. And also they realize that the messaging may become lost. There are many, many different factors. And so they come to us. They come to a language service company and they say, look, we want you to not just translate the various pieces, but we want you to manage the terminology. We want to be consistent in branding throughout. We want to have one voice globally.
Right. Okay. So thinking about it very strategically. So,
absolutely.
Yeah. And that seems like it would need to be something that would start early, because you could make a bad choice in one language for translation to another one later. Right. Because I think you've shared
sometimes
examples.
People, companies learn the hard way.
Yeah.
And they come to us, and those are typically really nice client relationships because they've already experienced what they needed. They experienced where they didn't want to go, and then we can show them, if we start building it this way, then you can go where you plan on being. I lost my train of thought.
No worries. So on the but the thing that's interesting to me is, so there's a lot of technical terminology.
Absolutely, yes.
And companies will sort of create their own jargon.
Mm-hmm.
There's things that they...
Yes.
And so how does that get resolved? Because that seems like that'd probably be the area that's the biggest problem.
And
right?
that's very true. So we start with a client and we do terminology mining. We oftentimes suggest it as a very first step. Let's look at your materials. Overall, your whole company materials. Let's come up with some very client-specific terminology. We will do the translation. We will make some suggestions. But then we would like to work with what we call an in-country team, people that the client will make available to us. And we present it to them and say, is that really the jargon that you're using in Spain or in France? Or, is that the terminology that you're used to using? We get the feedback, we incorporate it, and it's a basis. And at the same time, we put together style guides. How do we want to address your audience? Do you want to go with the formal address, or do you want to do informal? How do you want to do metrics? Do you want to convert numbers and metrics? Do you want to keep the US system? So there are many, many things that we try to determine up front before we actually start a translation project.
Yeah.
So if you do your prep work well, then there will be less changes in the end. We have developed a really robust system with an in-country review system. Clients often don't know about it. We help them put together an in-country review team. We train them. Anything that's translated, we encourage the clients to review. We realize that they're not linguists.
Right.
So we give them some guidelines. Hey, look for company-specific terms. Look for maybe some branding that we didn't catch. Look for these things. Don't make stylistic changes.
Right.
Don't start changing grammar.
Because we should have that right. Right.
We should have that right. But in the end, then that product becomes theirs. It's not something that we give them and they feel like it's been imposed by corporate. It's something that then it becomes
they put their
their
thumbprints
own.
on it. Got it.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So part of the
So we
process.
get buy-in all around.
Yeah. And it's funny because when you think about just other languages, I supported the Middle East and the UK at one company. I was their kind of one of their pre-sales guys. And I had to do this tour in the United Kingdom. So I went over, I was there for like a week and a half, and I was meeting with different companies. And some of the companies, and one of the words, the terms we would use standardly in our presentation, we would say we had a leveraged partner model. We would say the word leveraged partner model.
Right.
And for some reason, and I still don't even honestly understand it, every time I would say that, the people in the UK would laugh. Like they would laugh. And I finally stopped like the 6th meeting and I'm like, what?
What's so funny?
What is so funny? I'm saying the word leveraged partner model and they're like, you people in the US, you use leveraged and it means something completely different here and da, da, da. So, and I still don't even know why it was bad, but even when it's the same language, it can have a very different feel to it if you're not careful with what you're saying and how you're saying it. It could be not helpful. So I still know what I was doing wrong, but
that culture plays a big role, right? In language culture, you cannot separate them. And we were translating a book for accounting, and it was written in Germany, and we had people, those of the client reviewed it in English. We translated it into English, client reviewed it, and they made very interesting changes, although they were not incorrect, but they used words that, like segregation, and we said, let's not use that term. Let's use something different. And they said, but please explain to us why. Why can't you use that? So it has a cultural background that the Germans weren't that aware of.
Right? It's a very interesting way that looks. And I can imagine one of the things I want to do when we come back from the commercial break is I want to talk a little bit about the fact that language is just changing in general. So we're moving to emoticons and, memes. We have new words that get created. Companies think it's really cool to create a brand new name that you'd never heard of before, and then a whole nomenclature behind that. And so as you get into thinking about the translation of that internationally, like, what does that mean? Like, what does an emoticon mean? And is it really universal? Because one of the things I've heard is people, is they're like, we're moving back to these. Isn't it great? We're moving back to emoticons, but I want to know from you if it's really great or not. Don't tell me no. Don't let me get back. So when we get back, we're going to talk a little bit about the business of language. We're talking today with Uli Dendy. She is the CEO of TrueLanguage. You're listening to Build Your Best Business. We'll be right back.
Eric, tell us about Laddering Works.
So Laddering Works is a company that helps other businesses in one of two ways.
Okay.
So your company is either growing and you're not exactly sure how to keep up. So you need to scale operations, maybe raise some money, those kind of things.
So growing too fast.
Growing too fast. Growing too fast. You got kind of structural, you walk in every day, there's a fire. You've been doing it longer than 3 years or 1,000 days, and you still feel like you can't step away from the business and take a vacation. So we help companies on that side. So sort of operational support, looking at their financing, seeing if there's a way that we can help them, get to the next level. Or you're a company that's not doing any marketing at all. So you are maybe stalled. Your business has gotten to a certain level. You make a certain amount of money every year, but you've never gotten above that. And we come in and build marketing structure. So both of them are operational at the end of the day. It's about creating a process and a way to approach it that's strategic. It's that owners don't often know how to do both of those. So they're really good at sales, which means they may need operational structure because they're out signing more customers than they know what to do with. Or they've built a beautiful product that's the best kept secret. And so they need somebody to come in and help them market that product. And so that's the kind of businesses we look for. We come in as a stopgap and we work with a company for somewhere around 12 to 18 months typically, solve those problems for them and leave them better than we found them. And we're back. You're listening to Build Your Best Business. I'm talking today with Uli Dendy. She is the CEO of TrueLanguage, and I'm just showing off that I can say her name. Uli Dendy. Normally, I'm really bad with names.
Thanks, Eric.
I say them on the show. Well, Isaac knows. I'm like, I said your name 7 times, none of them the same, but at least we heard your name 7 times, so there you go.
Sure, your name gives some people...
Holtzclaw. I tell people that we couldn't afford vowels. we got to this country, we were so poor we couldn't afford a vowel, so there's only a couple in there, and people get exhausted. Like you get to the TZ and they're like, ugh, and I'm like, what? Come on, we're close. All you gotta do is write claw, we'll be good. So my family's got a nice German descent. That's a nice German name. So talking before the break, we're talking a little bit about language is so important now. There's a lot more written that's out there, and that's a way to communicate with your audience and keep things long term. But it's formal and informal. And I'm curious, like people are using all kinds of like new names of companies and emoticons and things like that. That's something that I would think a company would need to be careful about before they just take it straight into another language. Yes.
Yeah, we've been hired by several marketing firms to research product names. Oftentimes they're made up words, and sometimes they say, oh, let's just make sure they don't mean anything offensive in a number of languages.
Right.
One time we had this request, and they said, let's make sure it doesn't mean anything offensive in any language. I said, that's a tall order.
Let's narrow that a little bit, right?
Yeah. So, yes, obviously, you want to make sure that you're using a product name that is not offensive. And it is research, and it does take some time to come up with the correct answer. And sometimes we have had to advise our clients, look, that is just not going to work the Arabic languages, for instance, Arabic language or Arabic countries is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah. So with the kind of things that are happening in the future, so there's artificial intelligence, there's virtual reality, there's just a lot of tech kind of in this space, and some tech that's promising that says it's going to help us all communicate better, those kind of things. What do you see? Like as somebody who's more on the other side, because we all want to believe it, right? Like I want to believe it. I want to believe I can put a little earbud in my ear and that we're going to be able to understand each other. So what are the things that you're seeing?
Yeah, I'm very excited about technology, and at TrueLanguage we're always buying the latest technology that will help us to do things better, faster, higher quality. So the tools that we've seen as Google Translate, maybe not Google Translate, but there are other environments that help us work faster and better. I don't think it's going to come to a point where, at any time soon, where you can have a technical manual or a marketing piece that you can put into a machine translation tool and come up with a satisfactory outcome.
Right.
So the thing about technology is that it makes our life better, the professional's life better. Can't wait to see what kind of impact we will see with augmented reality. I would love to play in that area. We do translation of e-learning systems and software, and so AR is the next thing. I want to do something in virtual reality, like a training module, and have that in foreign languages.
Yeah, because one of the things that companies are always struggling with is how they deliver that consistent message if they're going to train people on something, or they want it all to be the same, right?
So language is just a small component of what we do. And what excites me about these AR systems is we actually get to implement them. So we get into the software themselves, and we will put in the foreign language component. So that's really what I can't wait to do.
Well, and even the way, and correct me if I'm wrong, but the way that someone in a different country might think about a concept is different.
Very much so, right? So we always want to be aware. I mean, colors are one of the obvious things. When we have a marketing piece, We look at the colors. We know that for Europe, Europeans like a very clean look, a lot of white space, not very busy. Latin America, they like vibrant colors, more action, more motion on the piece. So those are things we always have to be mindful of. And even more so, I would think, in environments that are interacting then with you.
Yeah, yeah. Well, and what's interesting about the authenticity of some of these pieces is that it's not in the majority of it, it's in the nuance.
Yes.
It's the small thing that you see or notice that tells you, oh, something about this is tipping point. I mean, it's a very tipping point.
Yeah, marketing pieces are very challenging to translate. When we work with a marketing piece, we ask our client, who's your audience? Where are they located? Where within the country are they located? What is the age group? So those are things that are very, very important for us to know so we can assign the right linguists for that particular job.
Yeah, because when companies go through branding, marketing, even building training materials, because it takes a long time to do that and do that effectively. My experience, I've seen time and time again where someone sort of tries to do can't we just get such and such to translate it for us? I mean, I know we spent a year building it, but they could do it in a week, right? It would be fine. And that just cheapens the effort, like you've gotten it to the point. So the best kind of projects that you guys are working on, so is it that someone's bringing you something that they need to like have translated and they've got this tight deadline, or are you better as like part of the team? Like, how do you like to work with companies?
The best project really is when we are onboarded as part of the team. Okay. We work with the various departments. We see what their needs are and where we can step in and support them most effectively. Once we do our homework, coming up with a marketing piece is much, much easier because we know the environment, we know the target, we know the tone of voice. So for us, a great project is always becoming part of the team and managing all these various components. And of course, if you do have a project, maybe you just need a birth certificate translated. For us, we offer that as well. It's a community support that we do.
Yeah, and I could see with some current political things that might be a big thing that you guys are working on right now.
We've seen an increase. Absolutely.
So in the future, so like as the world gets more flat, right? Or I mean, I guess if we think of that concept that where your customer is could be anywhere.
Anywhere. Yeah.
So you said augmented reality, and are there other technologies or other things that you think are going to be really helpful with that? Is this something that's like maybe more integrated? Like I took like foreign languages in school, right? That I think I know how to say I don't speak French in French. I can say it really well too. So then the person immediately says back to me.
What I think is fabulous is that we now have these software applications where you can travel and you speak into Google and it does give you a translation, where is the nearest train station, or you can even take a photograph of a food item and it will help you with that. I think that is fabulous.
And those work well?
Well, I think sometimes it depends really what language. Sometimes they work really well. But and it's a first line of communication, right?
Yeah. My wife, the family name is Lemunyon, and she looks very French. So anytime we travel in France, people assume she's French.
Just speak to her.
And my favorite story about that is we were in the metro in Paris, and we had a group of nuns come running up to us, and they were speaking French to my wife. And my wife did she took several years in high school and several years in college, and they were asking where a station was, right? And so they're asking her in French, and she's trying to answer them, and she's like, and then she said in English, and so what's the word for, like she said that, and then the nun was like, she speaks English, and then they pushed another nun forward who spoke English. So then they had the conversation the rest of the way. But the assumption when they saw her was, she's French, because she looks it. You just think she's French, and she's a good she's a good South Alabama girl, so she has that. So it's kind of funny how we, trying to figure out how to make that translation.
I think it's fabulous because we can be more secure in our travel.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
We don't have to be afraid to go to Vietnam. We know we can manage somehow. And that to me is a fun thing.
Yeah, and a lot of people do get worried about those. I've always just enjoyed it as the adventure. Like I get there and I'm like, I'm totally lost. I have no idea. Yeah. I know that in Germany one time I paid way too much for a train ticket. Like I think I paid like, I think I was going one stop and I paid for the unlimited ride or something. I have no idea, but that worked, right?
Yeah.
So for the company itself, so are there kinds of areas you guys are interested in? Other services you guys are thinking about as stuff changes?
We are incorporating not just we started out with really focusing on technical translation. Now it's pretty much all inclusive, any area. We have seen an increase in over the phone interpretation.
Okay.
Which is great. We have 100, and I think we offer 180 languages. You dial a number, and within 20 seconds, you have an interpreter on the line in any of these 180 languages. Video remote interpretation is also a great avenue that we offer, but we just don't have that many takers yet. That's something that I would like to focus on next year.
What is remote interpretation?
Well, you have an interpreter on your phone or on your iPad, and you can see the interpreter and you can see the other party.
Okay.
So it is no longer just on the phone. Now it becomes visual, which is we express so much that is not verbal through our gestures and face.
And people like me who have dry sarcasm. And so I screw people up all the time because I'm saying something and I'm being funny and they think I'm actually being serious.
Hey, I'm German. I take everything serious.
So did he really mean that? I'm like, no, I didn't really mean that. I didn't mean it. Well, thank you so much for joining us.
Well, thank you for having me.
Yeah, and so if your company is looking for translation services, we'll put all the information in our show notes so that you can reach out to Uli and her team. We've been talking today with Uli Dendy. She is the CEO of TrueLanguage. You've been listening to Build Your Best Business, and if you're not thinking about building your business in other countries and in other ways, you should be. So until next time, what are you going to do to build your best business?